Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Adam, and the RSPO Secretariat for giving us this opportunity to present today. I'm actually going to talk about dynamics of palm plantation development in Western Central Africa. My presentation will have some overview of the dynamics in Africa with a few slides specific to some of the sustainability initiatives that ULM has undertaken. In terms of my presentation outline, there will be a few slides on ULM in Africa. I will talk about the organized agriculture and its role in the diversification of economies, palm development playing a dominant role in the transformation of the agri-sector, associated socioeconomic concerns in Central and West Africa, how RSPO can be an enabling frameworks for solutions, some of the spatial conservation planning in ULM concessions, and how FPIC can ensure social equilibrium. ULM is not new to Africa. It's had 25 years of experience in sustainable supply chain management. ULM was first established in 1989 to export non-oil products from Nigeria. But today, Lee has a leading position in 7 products and 4 new focus areas in Africa. The next slide actually indicates that ULM has invested in Africa for a long-term stay, which of course has sweeping implications for its sustainability initiatives. Just as an example, 1.74 million tons of commodity has been sourced from Africa in the last 12 months. ULM is operational in 24 African countries with 3.4 million farmers in the network. Presently, the investments are $604 million and 2.2 billion has been earmarked for further investment by 2015. How does agriculture play a role or catalyze the diversification of economies and enhance non-mineral oil revenues? If you actually look at this slide or this graph here, you will find 4 clusters of African countries. On the far upper left-hand corner are the major oil exporters with their GDPs entirely dependent on oil. Gabon, of course, and other countries have some dependence on mining. 2 clusters with countries in transition with largely unorganized agriculture sectors. And the top right-hand corner, countries which, of course, are reliant on manufacturing and servicing sectors with some input from organized agriculture. The case of South Africa is well known. It, of course, has a lot of processing of fruits and the wineries, which do make some contribution to the GDP there. Organized agriculture will catalyze transformation of the sector. If you actually look at these bars here, you will notice that 85% of agriculture is in the smallholder domain, but as compared to China, this is largely unorganized. It tends to be subsistence and highly marginalized. What is the potential for agricultural development in Africa? If you actually look at the potential arable land available, it's roughly 2 million square kilometers. Within this land, 0.24 million square kilometers is already under permanent crops. This leaves 1.76 million square kilometers to be potentially developed. And I'd like to emphasize that these are areas from sub-Saharan Africa. I think it's important to realize that under sustainable land use, a proportion can certainly contribute towards conservation, which can add to the existing land under conservation of nearly 1 million square kilometers. I will actually allude to this later on in my presentation. Palm, of course, can capitalize on this availability of land within the continent. I think this is justified because palm cultivation will reduce import dependence on edible oils, provide a sustainable source for exports, and help to address food security issues. If you look at the figures below, the total planting target, including other countries, with some countries on the right-hand side elaborated, is around 570 million hectares, but the total land bank available for development is 1.75 million hectares. This is 1/100th, of course, of the total land available for agriculture, as I indicated in my last slide. But as we all realize, and we have been discussing it in several forums, including the last year's RT as well as RT10 this year, while palm in Africa can provide employment and support capacity development, we of course have strong indication that palm development will support increase of incomes in Africa. As an example, for Olam Palm Gabon concessions, in the Awala and Moila areas, the average income projected to increase by 9% or 32% respectively. Of course, with this employment, there is serious capacity building required, and we have embarked on a fairly ambitious capacity building program. At present, we have 4 training sessions for workers on nursery management, immature oil palm maintenance, high conservation value monitoring, and health and safety. There are also plans afoot to develop a training center for formal agronomic training to local people. However, there are significant and associated social and environmental issues to address. Social issues are, however, more pertinent to West Africa than Central Africa. We have seen several reports that have indicated that because of land disputes caused by the lack of negotiated settlements, there has been instability among communities, leading to far-reaching social consequences. West Africa, of course, as compared to Central Africa, is characterized by several pockets of high population densities and greater dependence on small holdings, thereby requiring a greater emphasis on addressing social issues, and I will indicate how the FPIC process has allowed us to ensure social equilibrium among the communities we work with. There are critical high conservation value areas in Central Africa. The map there shows the Central African Regional Program for Environment Landscapes, or the Congo Basin Forest Partnership Landscapes. This area, much of this area is also a priority ecoregion for WWF. It's probably one of the last unspoiled areas in the world, with stupendous diversity of species and ecosystem, and the few slide just indicates a tiny subset of the ecosystems existing within this region. I think it's important to realize, and this is something that we have drawn great strength from, the RSPO has provided an excellent enabling framework to resolve social and environmental concerns. Of course, there's adaptation needed, there's building along the way needed, there is learning needed, but certainly the framework which has been provided has been extremely useful. To give you a few examples, public consultations through the new planting procedure for high conservation value assessments and social and environmental impact assessments have helped Olam improve present and future due diligence on new plantations. The NPP has resulted in partnerships between Olam and stakeholders for improving land use policies and landscape level planning of concessions. This is a particularly exciting partnership we are developing with the NGOs. As a result of a gap assessment conducted by several stakeholders, which include the 2 major palm producers, we have realized that there are certain key areas to address in the national interpretation of the principles and criteria for Gabon. To summarize, these actually concern labor issues, these concern best management practices, these concern health and safety regulations for palm concessions, and what is extremely important, there is a working group on high conservation value interpretation within Gabon. We have had, of course, various scenarios for awareness raising. I was just talking to somebody outside. we have had the RSPO Roadshow conducted by ProForest, and OLAM has continued to proactively promote the framework in other regional conferences such as the Palm Oil Conference in Accra, Ghana. I just was tempted to add that all the national interpretation and the RSPO Roadshow have actually involved several government staff from various ministries. As an example, while I did talk about the need for solutions for not compromising high conservation value areas, I just want to give you two examples we have from our concessions, which we are pretty excited about. We are building on these, but this is our first concession. It's roughly around 20,000 hectares, out of which nearly half, 10,000 hectares, has actually been identified as high conservation value areas. The area on the black in the top. And then within the concession itself, we have several areas set aside for buffer zones and areas of steep slope, largely to actually act as erosion control mechanisms. It's a fairly ambitious program. We have been extremely enthused about implementing this. Presently, we have an extensive system of high conservation value areas, buffer zones, and steep slope areas marked and incorporated in our GIS database. Once again, with respect to spatial conservation planning, this is a very ambitious plan we have for the Moina concession, which is south of the Avala concession. Nearly 15,000 hectares of high conservation value areas. You do see in the central portion a fairly emphatic corridor which is connecting the northern high conservation value areas to the southern high conservation value areas. This has, of course, been designed based on extensive assessments on biodiversity as well as hydrological factors for the design of this particular landscape. FPIC. OLAM has invested considerable resources in FPIC. Free, prior and informed consent, because we believe that it provides a social equilibrium among communities around OLAM concessions. Key activities include participative mapping of village activities in areas of native customary value, a candid explanation of positive and negative impacts of plantation development on livelihoods and environment, setting up a system of representation for understanding rights, available compensation schemes for individuals, and the established negotiation process. Ultimately, this leads to the development of and signing of a social contract, and I think we have spent a lot of time and energy to kind of expand upon this social contract to provide a holistic social valid package to the villages or the communities. Which also includes facets of economic empowerment. We do this not because we want to comply with RSPO and achieve certification. We are convinced that this is ensuring the right kind of social equilibrium because a large percentage or all of our labor actually comes from the surrounding villages. So this can ensure stable employment generation, with enhanced confidence with the company and its policies, as well as reduced risk of community conflict. If anybody knows the Central African landscape, there is strong community involvement of all facets of people's lives, and therefore a labor issue which happens on the plantation immediately gets transposed to the communities, and therefore it is necessary that there is satisfaction across all domains in community engagement. This is a just quickly describe it. This participative social map actually indicates the location and intensity of village level activities, which has guided our land use planning significantly. I don't have time to actually go into the details of this, but once again, I think this has been an extremely useful process. In conclusion, the re-establishment of palm in Africa under the multi-stakeholder paradigm of the RSPO takes the sector from strength to strength in its quest for benchmarking sustainable palm production. Furthermore, Several African governments are demonstrating resolve for sustainable development, and this needs to be supported with corporate responsibility within and outside the RSPO process. Advocacy with the government is extremely important here. National interpretations as carried in Gabon are vital for conducive climate for RSPO compliance. We have been trying to understand how the Gabonese legislation, for example, is relevant for our labor welfare package within the concessions. And we do find that there are facets of it not necessarily compliant with the RSPO principles and criteria. And therefore, while there was initial thought that we'll adopt the international PNCs, there is ample evidence to now support a national interpretation of the international PNCs for Gabon. Thank you.